We're going to do something a little bit different in starting the message today is we're going to celebrate the youth of our church, our young people. They were supposed to have Youth Day last week, but I wasn't here last week. So we're going to do it this week. So if the young people will stand up right now. If you'll stand up. Thank you, Mike. You make me feel young already. Simon, we need you to stand up, brother. Because we're going to be talking to you really quick. You know, I have heard many times when I was growing up, I have heard this statement. The youth are the future of the church. I disagree with that statement. They are the church today with us. Look into Joel chapter 2. I want to read this for you. In Joel chapter 2, verses 28 and 29. Look what it says. And it shall come to pass afterwards that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. How much is all flesh? It didn't say no children involved here, because he's going to mention a little bit further. Upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters, that's our children right here, shall prophesy. Prophesy means not only that you're going to talk, God's going to give you prophecy. It means you're going to preach, you're going to teach. Okay, it means all those things. You're going to be teachers. You like to be a teacher? You teach by the way that you live, by the way. You don't have to say a single word to teach. You prophesy by the way that you live. You're going to prophesy, and your old men will dream dreams. Your young men will see visions. Yeah. Does that sound like the future, or does it sound like today? Sound like today, because we live in that day he's talking about. We're living in the last days, and he says we need to be united as one for the kingdom of God. In other words, you need to be active members, not, well, that's for mom and dad to do. That's for you to do. And because God has done this, we're going to have special prayer for you. I would like you guys to come up here right now. Simon, come on up. Everybody come up. And the elders, would you like to come up here with me? We're going to have a special prayer of dedication for these young people today. Okay? A special prayer of dedication for their service to God. We're going to surround these kids right here, lay our hands on them, and we're going to have a special prayer for these young people. We're going to pray for these young people that God will fulfill His promise in their hearts, in their mind, to let them know that this is their church. This is their message to give to a world that's dying. Hold things up for people here. Now, unfortunately, there'll be some that might be a little bit small for me, but I don't know. But I know that yours, I know that they're small for yours. We're going to do small for yours too. Yours. Yours. All right, you can sit down. Sorry, Mike. Ran out of larges. Well, we're still journeying through the sanctuary together, you and I. You know, we talked about the 10 designations of the box of different names for the ark that's in the sanctuary last time, remember? And the title of the message today is called The Testimony of the Lord. That's one of the designations for that ark. And you notice that we took and we looked inside that ark, and we noticed that there was 3 things that was put inside there. I want you to realize that they were put where? Inside. That's really important to know that they were put inside the ark. Because the outward, God says, is not important. What's important? The inward. What He wants to do for you, and only He can do it, is what's important. So we want to take a peek at those. And we're going to read the first one in Exodus 25, if you'll turn there with me. Exodus chapter 25, when He describes the ark, here in verse 21, He tells us something here that He wants to put in that ark. He says, "And thou shalt put the mercy seat above the ark." Now, it's important as we look at that, the mercy seat is above all those things, which tells us that everything that goes in there is there because He has mercy on you and me. Wow, I'm so thankful that He has mercy on me, aren't you? God has mercy on us. Because of His mercy, He's got these things in there. He's got this one He's going to tell us here. He says, "I put the mercy seat above the ark, and in the ark you shall put the testimony that I shall give you." Now, He hadn't given it yet, but He says this is where it needs to go when I give you this testimony. This is where it goes, is inside that ark. That's interesting that that's where He put it. He didn't put it out on the straight gate before you come into the outer court and look and say, "Oh, I need to keep these here before I can get in." He didn't do that. He didn't put it on the door before you get into the sanctuary. Say, "Oh, before I can go in there, I need to do that." He didn't put it on the veil before He entered the most holy place. "Oh, I need to do that before I can go in there." He didn't put it on the outside of the ark. He put it on the inside of the ark for a good reason. Because He wants to teach us a testimony, a lesson to learn. Now, as we recognize that one thing that's in there, we need to read about the other things that are in there and notice a particular order of them. Let's turn to Numbers 17:10. Numbers chapter 17 and verse 10. We're just verifying that these things were put in there, okay? We read about it in Hebrews, but here's the actual happening of it. Numbers 17 and verse 10. "And the Lord said unto Moses, Bring Aaron's rod again before the testimony," which we know is the law, "to be kept for a token against the rebels. And thou shalt quite take away their murmurings from me, that they die not." And so here is where the request was made to put that rod, I shouldn't say request, it was a command, to put that rod in their ark with the testimony. Let's look at the next one in Exodus 16. Exodus 16, verses 32 to 34. "And Moses said, This is the thing which the Lord commanded. Fill an omer of it to be kept for your generations, that they may see the bread wherewith I have fed you in the wilderness, when I brought you forth from the land of Egypt. And Moses said unto Aaron, Take a pot, and put a omer full of manna therein, and lay it up before the Lord to be kept for your generations. And the Lord commanded Moses, so that Aaron laid it up before the testimony to be kept. Now it's interesting here, as we look at this, that the manna is told where it was supposed to go when it was given. Okay? And so we notice that we have these three things in here, and the order is really important because it teaches us about the gospel. You see, the manna stands for who? Stands for Jesus. Jesus says, your parents, they ate of the manna in the wilderness, and they what? They died. But I am that living manna. I'm the manna that you eat of me, and you die not. You will live forever. And so Jesus declared of that manna that it was him that you need to feast on. And then that manna sets first in that ark, and then the testimony, which teaches us a lesson that the law then is the character of Jesus. He says, when you eat of me, I can then impart my character to you, which is why that law had to be hidden in the ark. Thy law have I written in your heart, he says. And so when you feast on Jesus, he says, my promise is, if you'll come to me, all you that labor and heavy laden, I will give you rest, and I will write my law in your heart. And then when that happens, that dead stick that used to be you and me, we will bear fruit. And it'll have pretty blossoms on it that will attract people and say, what lovely almonds. They're so delicious. We had almonds today for breakfast. They're so good. Almonds are great. How many of you like almonds? I'm like, these kids, you don't know what almonds are? You don't like almonds? Come on. Almonds are great. How about almond milk? You have almond milk? Yeah, yay. Almond milk. Almonds are great. He says, first Jesus, then the law, and then the fruit. In other words, the fruit that you bear is because you can't help it, because I've made you alive by following Jesus and having my law written in your heart. Fruit is automatic. You see, we don't have to try to go, I need to try to do something. I got to help an old lady across the street today so I can look like a good guy. Is that what I do? No, you say, Lord, use me today for your glory, and you can't help but bear fruit. You see a need and think, the Lord wants me to do that, and you can't help but do it. You think, I feel like doing that, but I've got to look righteous today. Is that how we go about it? No. You see, what happens when Jesus is my all in all, the law begins to develop in my heart, and fruit begins to spring forth. Isn't that great? And so what we want to do today is we want to look at that law. Because see, Jesus lives to lead us to the law of his character. So we're going to take a look at that law and see what's so special about it that Jesus wants to lead us to that law. Let's take a look at it. Let's turn to Exodus 20 and verse 1. Exodus 20 and verse 1. It begins before he gives you the law by saying this, and God spoke all these words. He spoke all of them. So before he wrote it on stone, and a stone represents what? Permanency, but it also represents Jesus, which is permanent. I've always been and always will be, right? So permanency is, we know by writing it on stone, and Jesus says, I am that rock. I have always been, I always will be, tells me his law has always been and always will be. And so it says the same story. But he says before he wrote it, he spoke it. Now we want to see what's important about him speaking it. Why would he do that? First, let's take a look at Psalms 89:34. Keep your hand here in Exodus. We're coming right back to it. Psalms 89 and verse 34. Here the Spirit is moved upon the psalmist here, and this is what he had him write. He says, my covenant will I not break. Okay, when he makes an agreement with you, I'm not going to break it. And look at what he says here, though. He says, nor am I going to alter anything that comes out of my lips. Now, it's interesting that he inspired him to write this. because he had spoken the law aloud. It had come out of his lips, not out of Moses' lips, out of God's lips. He spoke it to the children of Israel. Okay? He spoke it first, and he says, I'm not going to alter that. Today we have a problem. People want to alter the law of God, don't they? Well, that's done away with at the cross. No, you can't say that, because that makes God what? A liar. And who's the liar? Satan's the liar, and the chief of them. He is the liar. But what does Satan want you to think about Jesus? That he's the liar. He's the liar, and so he's trying to trick us subtly into calling Jesus a liar by accepting the lie that the law has been changed. You see how that works? When we have this clear word in the Bible, he says, I promise you I'm not going to alter my word, and man comes along, oh, no, he changed it at the cross. See, Jesus is really a liar, is what they're saying. Who inspires him to say that? Satan is the inspiration of that. And so when men come to you and tell you that the law is done away with, you can tell that that inspiration did not come from God, because he's not a liar, because he doesn't go against his word. We have to remember that. It's very simple. And so back to Exodus, we know that Jesus isn't a liar. And then in verse 2, he wants to remind him of something before he says the first law. He says, I am the Lord your God, which has brought you out of the land of Egypt. What does that represent? Now, Egypt represents all of the apostate religions. Counterfeit religions is what Egypt represents. And then he goes, out of the house of bondage. Where did he rescue you and me from? Out of apostate religions and out of bondage to sin. All of us are sinners needing what? To be brought out from that, to be rescued from that. And so he's speaking this law to those who he has rescued out of Egypt. You notice he doesn't give them the law before he takes them out of Egypt. He takes you out of Egypt and then gives you the law. Isn't that interesting? You see the sequence? Jesus first, the law next, and then the fruit. You can see that lined right up here. It's perfect. It says, I'm telling you this law because I've rescued you from Egypt already. And because I love you and I've rescued you, let me show you how to live like and for me. Isn't that cool? And so he lays it right out here for us. He tells us right here. He says, I've rescued you, because he's telling this to Israel. And who's the Israel today? We are. Everybody who accepts Jesus, truly accepts Jesus as their Savior, is the Israel of God. And if you're the Israel of God, he wants to speak to you today. There's many people outside this church are the Israel of God and haven't heard him speak yet the law. And we've got these youth right here that we just dedicated to God. We're going to show them his law, the way they live their life. Isn't that cool? Yeah, it's your job. It's mine too, but yours too. And so here we have it. Now he begins in verse 3, giving the law. He says, thou shalt have no other gods before me. The very first one was the very first one that was broken in the Garden of Eden. You see, in the Garden of Eden, love and selfishness met that day at the Tree of Paradise. Love and selfishness. Let's take a look at it really quick in Genesis 3:5. Keep your hand in Exodus. We're coming right back. Genesis 3 and verse 5. Notice this, what Satan is deceiving Eve with here. He says, for God doth know in the day that you eat thereof, this fruit, then your eyes will be opened, and you shall be what? As gods, knowing good and evil. In other words, you don't need anybody to instruct you anymore. You don't need anybody to tell you to stay away from that tree, or go here, go there. You're God. And so when you listen to Satan, you have broken the first commandment. You have put another God before God. You. Yourself. You've made yourself to be God, and now I don't need your instruction, Jesus. I've got it worked out pretty good myself. Do we work things out ourselves today pretty much? We pretty much don't ask God for direction. We just go because that looks right. And when we do that, we have put another God before Him. We did not get on our knees and say, help me, Father, to know which way to go. Instead, we look and say, that looks like it's the right way right there. I'm going that direction. And God says, no, I don't want you to go that way. And we don't go to Him for wisdom. We just determine that that's the right thing. And when we do that, we're breaking the first commandment. I want you to remember that, kids and adults. Remember that before you do stuff, say, Lord, what would you have me to do? Would you please direct my path and lead me in the path of your righteousness for your name's sake? This got to be our first thought. Is not what looks right so that we're deciding what's good and what's evil, but that we're looking to God who knows what's good and what's evil. We think we know too much these days. We need to lean upon Jesus. All right, back to the Exodus here. Exodus 20. Okay, so verse 4 now. He says, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven images, any likeness of anything that is heaven above, or is earth beneath, or is in water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, or serve them, for I, thy Lord thy God, am a jealous God. All right, now, what's he talking about here? What's the emphasis here? What's he trying to say? Well, to start us off, let's keep your hand here, and let's go to Exodus 25. Exodus 25 and verse 22. We're going to look at the first part of 22 up to the comma. He says, but thou shalt, wish I'm in the wrong one. There we go. And there I will meet with you. Where's he going to meet with us? When we by faith journey with Jesus to his ark. I'm going to meet with you there at your holiness, at your place. When we make an image, we take a shortcut of following Jesus to the presence of the Father. He says, I can't bless you there at that idol. You can't think, well, I'm going to set up this thing here, this little idol, and I'll just pray there because that's easier. It's a shortcut. We're trying to take a shortcut to God. And he says, don't make any of these images because I'm a jealous God. We think of that word jealousy, we kind of have a negative connotation to it, like, oh, that's not even a righteous thing to be jealous. But I have to say that I know that you should be jealous if your spouse is spending more time with someone else than you. If I tell my wife that I love her and I go hang out with another, you think my wife's going to be jealous? She's going to be jealous. And more than that, I'll probably get a frying pan over the noggin. And so the reality is that, God says, look I love you so much that, I don't want you hanging out over here thinking you're with me and saying you're with me and you're really not. I want you to come. I want you to follow my son Jesus to my throne and hang out with me. That's where I'm going to meet with you. I'm not over there or over there. I'm here where I've shown you I'm going to be. He says, I'm a jealous God. I'm jealous of your time. I love you. Isn't that good news? That is good news that God loves me so much he doesn't want me to waste my time pretending like he's somewhere else. He says, I've shown you where I am. I've had you built this because I want to hang out with you. And you're going somewhere else and pretending like you're hanging out with me, and you're not. I'm a jealous God. So, he tells you this here because he doesn't want you to be going the wrong way and not really being with him. Because he wants to be with you. And so this law is simply a declaration of his love for you and says, I need to be with you. And he goes on to say, he says, visiting the iniquity of the fathers of the children of the third and the fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Okay? How do we keep his commandments? By hanging out with him, right? Letting Jesus lead you to the law that he might write it on your heart, right? Only as you hang out with him can these things happen. If you try to obey the law, the letter of the law, that's not hanging out with Jesus. That's you trying to get it done on your own. That's you putting another God before him because you're not listening to his advice. Verse 7, next law here. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. For the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. We like to think that that's just people swearing. All those people are taking the Lord's name in vain. That's the least of what this commandment is talking about. That's the least. Because most of the people that are doing that are not declaring themselves to be Christians anyway. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain is most clearly understood when we look at the book of Revelations, chapter 3 and verse 14. Revelations chapter 3 and verse 14. And what church is he talking to here? And the Laodicea church is which one? That's us, living the last days. We're that final church before he comes in the clouds of glory. And he has a problem. We have this problem. So this is what he wants to say, starting in verse 14. And unto the angel of the church of Laodicean write, these things saith the Amen, the faithful, the true witness, the beginning of the creation of God. So who's speaking here? Jesus. So he says now in verse 15, he says, I know thy works, that you are neither cold nor hot. And I word that you were cold or hot. So we have to explain the cold or hot now here. Cold is this. He says, I would rather you say I'm an atheist and I don't believe in God than being lukewarm. I would rather you just say, no, I don't believe in God and I'm just going my own way. Because when you say that, you're not leading people away from God because you're not saying I'm one of his. Okay? That's very clear. I don't look for an atheist to get a picture of God. Do you? Look at an atheist, oh, that's a picture of God. No, you don't do that. You look to a Christian. So what's hot? Hot means I'm on fire for Jesus Christ. On fire for him. I live and live for him alone. But when you're lukewarm, you say, I'm a Christian, but you don't look like one. You don't act like one. You look like the world around you, but yet you claim to be righteous and you do good things. You're faithful Sabbath worshipers, but yet there's no transformation happening in your life that comes from above. You have plenty of behavior modifications is about it. And Jesus says, I don't like that at all. In fact, that's the most distasteful thing to me of all things. That's what he means here in Exodus when he says, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Don't pretend to be one of mine. Don't claim to be one of mine, and I know you not, because you don't spend time with me. So that's breaking the commandment, is when you say you're one of his, and you're not, really, because you don't allow him to change you. You don't allow him to do his work in you. You're too busy doing it yourself. You're too busy trying to be good. You see, good people don't go to heaven. It's people who love Jesus that go to heaven, that let him transform them, that let him do the change. And how does he do the change? When you fall in love with Jesus and you let him lead you in the way to the law, that when you spend time meditating upon his word, he can write it in your heart and transformation takes place. That dead stick now bears almonds and has a lovely blossom on it, so that you may shine for him and say, yeah, I was once dead, but now I'm alive. And when you know that you're alive because of him, you're on fire and you're hot. And people say, I want that. Are you getting the picture here? You see how those three things in the R? A picture of them? Wow. So that's why he's telling you not to do that. Not telling you not to swear. He says, I'll take care of that. I've told you guys my story, how I got the swearing out of me. I wasn't praying to get rid of swearing. I just started spending time with Jesus. Next thing I know, someone pointed out to me, you don't swear anymore. Really? Wow. I didn't know that. You see, God does the work. That's what needs to happen. He needs to get it done. Not me just trying. I need to try to clean up my mouth. No, you don't. You need to get close to Jesus, and He'll do the washing. He'll do the cleaning. What's that? He's got the real soap, the soap that really cleans. Yeah. Yeah, we have to just kind of, am I going to try not to swear? No, that's, no. You don't have to try. From the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So when He got my heart, what's going to come out of it? What He impresses in it. And it won't be swear words. All right, number 8. Exodus 20, verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Interesting that that's the only commandment that has remember, and it's the only one we want to tell people to forget. The world teaches, oh, forget that. That's nailed to the cross. And yet it's the only one that says remember, because God knew that we would forget. That we would say, well, what difference does a day make? You know, Monday's more convenient for me. That's my day off. And the Lord knows I love Him, so I'm going to make that day the holy day. Can you make a day holy? No, you cannot. You can try. But when you do that, what have you just done? You have broken the first commandment. You have put another God before God. God says, this is the day that I have made. Rejoice and be glad in it. Well, yeah, I'm glad you made that day, but Lord, that doesn't work for me. This is more convenient for me over here. You just made yourself God. And so, therefore, it just doesn't work. And so he says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Oh, that was for the Jew. All right, let's turn to Genesis chapter 2. Genesis chapter 2. We got to read this through, starting in verse 1. He says, thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day God ended His work which He had made, and He rested the seventh day from all of His work which He had made. And God blessed the seventh day for all the Jews that were living. Oh, wait a minute, there was no Jews yet. It was only Adam and Eve. Oh, it's for the Jew, really? Well, you see, that lie's figured out right here. You don't have to go very far in your studies of the Bible to realize this is for God's people, all that I make. God blessed the seventh day, and He did something special to it. He did what? What does sanctification mean? What happens with sanctification? Okay, come on. I've preached this sermon before. But come on. Okay, look at. I have to remind you of the three cations again. Okay, you have three cations. You have justification, which removes the penalty of sin. You have sanctification, which removes the power of sin, and glorification, which removes you from the presence of sin. First, Jesus, by His blood, removes the penalty of sin. And then by His blood, He sanctifies you and gives you the power over the enemy of God. You say, wait a minute, Pastor. The enemy hadn't shown his face here yet. Adam and Eve haven't sinned. What are you talking about? He sanctified that day when there was no sinning happening here. Who knows the beginning from the end? Who knew that they were going to sin? Who knew that they needed power over the enemy? God did. So let's not go there. God is way ahead of us. Before man sinned, the plan of salvation was in place. Jesus already said, when they sin, I stand in that gap, and I will take their place, or Adam and Eve would have died right then. But instead, they had to kill an innocent lamb to show that He meant what He said. The wages of sin is death. And Jesus says, to remind you of that, you're going to kill that innocent lamb who did nothing wrong, that represents me, who will have done nothing wrong, and I will die in your place. You see, brothers and sisters, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy didn't start with the children of Israel. It started at creation because God loves you, and he says, look, I've set this day aside because I want you to have power over the lies of the enemy, powers of all the deception he's going to set before you. If you will come and set aside this day, the 24-hour period that I have given you from sundown to sundown, you will find victory unto the Lamb. You will be made holy and made like me if you will listen to me and not set aside your own day that is not sanctified. Are you getting a picture here? God has set aside this day for you and me to keep it holy. Let's take a look at Revelations 1:5. Revelations 1:5. And from Jesus Christ, who is the faithful witness and the first begotten of the dead, and the prince of the kings of the earth, unto him that loved us and washed us from our sins in his own blood. You see, on that ark is sprinkled blood, showing that I love you, and by my blood I can lead you here, and I can remove the power of sin from your life if you will come unto me, all you that labor and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Jesus wants to give us rest from the enemy of God. You see, when we're not out there in the world struggling with the day-to-day living, and we're here resting in Jesus, we're finding strength to go through the week that is before us. We're gaining strength over the enemy of God. And then in Isaiah 66, he inspired Isaiah to write this for those who thought that the Sabbath was temporary and it was going to go away. Isaiah 66, verses 22 and 23. For as the new heavens and the new earth, which I will make, shall remain before me, saith the Lord, so shall your seed and your name remain. And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith the Lord. So, when are we going to be doing away with the Sabbath? Like, never. Never. We're going to be celebrating. Can you imagine in heaven? Every Sabbath is going to be a remembrance of how he gave me power over the enemy. I come there on the Sabbath thinking, wow, because he set aside this day and made it holy and sanctified it, I'm here. I'm here because he made it possible. He gave me the power to have victory over that lying enemy, that old serpent called the devil. I'm here because he created the Sabbath day to make me holy. Wow. Can you imagine that? All eternity you're going to celebrate that he made you holy, that he removed the power of sin for your life because you were obedient unto his call. He has done that. Psalms 19. Psalms 19. If you guys don't know this as a song by now, I hope you will learn it. Psalms 19, verse 7. The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. More to be desired are they than gold, yea, than much fine gold. Sweeter also than the honey and the honeycomb. That sounds like it needs to be nailed to the cross. It's just too good to be true. Got to get rid of that. Wow. Can you imagine David writing this thinking, boy, this chains on me, or this law chaining me down? Well, I better make up this fake song. No, he was singing this song because he realized that it set him free. James calls it the law of liberty. I've been set free. And David here, he sings the law of liberty. I've been set free. Who doesn't want you to be free? The devil, that old serpent, that snake. He doesn't want you to be free. He wants you to be burdened. And David says, boy, when I spend time with Jesus, when I dwell in the house of the Lord forever, He writes the law in my heart, and it's converting me, it's changing me, and I'm producing fruit for Him. What a wonderful God. That's sweeter than the honey and the honeycomb. Oh, man. You see, when we love the Lord our God with all of our heart, with all of our might, that makes the last 6 commandments, to love the neighbor as yourself, possible. Impossible without the first 4. And you let Him write that on your heart and develop that character, the last 6 become automatic. The way I treat you is simply the fruit of loving God with all my heart and mind. Coming and meeting with God before the testimony of the Lord. Meeting there and let Him accomplish His work in me. He who began a good work in me, He will indeed complete it. Will you let Him today come before His testimony by the way of Jesus and be made whole?